Hello, my name's Liz. Welcome to my Advantages, Disadvantages essay lesson. This is for IELTS Writing Task 2, Academic and General Training Test. Now, we're going to start off by looking at the easiest essay question that you can get in the IELTS test. And that is, what are the advantages and disadvantages? We're going to start with analysing the essay question. Then we will plan the ideas and organise them into paragraphs. Then we will write each paragraph and review it and look at the content so that we end up with a Band Score 9 model essay. When we've finished that essay, we're going to look at a different type of essay, which is, do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? And this is probably the most difficult essay to write in IELTS. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at how to present a clear opinion for this essay question, because that's the key to getting a high band score. And we're going to review each paragraph again to form a full model essay for Band Score 9. And for that essay, we're going to say that the disadvantages outweigh the advantages, and that will be the view that we're going to support. When we finish that essay, I'm going to look at the alternative view. So that is when the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, and I will quickly go through that essay to show you the differences. So you will be able to write both essays. When I finish that, I'm going to review the tips for all the essays that we've looked at. Now, the tips are very important, so please watch them. At the end of the tips, I'm going to look at a 3-body paragraph essay structure and just give you some tips on that. Then we're going to look at vocabulary, and although some of you have excellent English and don't feel the need to review vocabulary, please take a look, because in the vocabulary I do explain about using idiomatic language and idioms. So make sure that you do watch that part of the video. Right, so it's time to start, and we start with what are the advantages and disadvantages. Let's have a look at the essay question that we're going to use for this lesson. Some people think that it is beneficial for children to do paid work, while others think it can be harmful for children. What are the advantages and disadvantages of children doing paid work? So here we've got the introduction of the topic, and that is children doing paid work. It says that some people think there are advantages, it's beneficial, and some people think there are disadvantages, which means it's harmful. So you've got the two sides. And the instructions, what are the advantages and disadvantages? I have many students asking me, should I give both the advantages and disadvantages? Well, of course, if you look, we've got the word and, which means both. So you have to give the advantages and you have to give the disadvantages. But if we look a little bit more at the instructions, what you're going to see is that they're not asking whether you agree with the advantages. It's not asking if you agree with the disadvantages. It's not asking you if the advantages are more important than the disadvantages. It's not asking for your opinion at all. It's only asking that you give a list, or you state the advantages and you state the disadvantages. Even if you agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. Just give the information. So there's no opinion at all in this essay. Now, the instructions tell you that they want the advantages and disadvantages, and that of course means we have a fixed essay structure. So let's have a look at that. You will have 4 paragraphs to your essay when you have advantages and disadvantages. The introduction will contain 2 sentences, 2 statements. The first one is your background statement, and that will introduce the topic. And that means all you have to do is paraphrase the information given to you by IELTS. Then after that, you've got your thesis statement, and that has to introduce your main points, so your answer. Now, of course, it's a little bit difficult to write one sentence that contains all the advantages and disadvantages, so I will show you how to write that properly. Then you have 1 body paragraph for all the advantages, 1 body paragraph for all the disadvantages, and then your conclusion will summarise the main points. And again, like the thesis statement, it's difficult to summarise everything, so I'll show you very carefully how you can write that. So let's have a look again at the essay question. Before you start planning your ideas for an essay, you need to look more closely at the topic. Now, the topic is children doing paid work. And we have to think a little bit more deeply about what they mean by children and what they mean by paid work. So sometimes you can read an essay question and it's very clear, but other times you read it and you think, I need to consider a little bit more about what this actually means before I plan my ideas. So let's do that now. I want to look at the word children and what that incorporates, and paid work and what we mean by that. You should always analyse the words and issues in your essay question before you start planning ideas or thinking of your answer. Now, for this essay question, we have children and paid work. And paid work, you can see, means many different things. It's not clear if they're talking about part-time work or full-time work. Now, full-time work means that the child isn't going to school. Part-time work means maybe the child is only working for 2 or 3 hours on a Saturday when they're not at school anyway. Manual, the child might be working in a factory, or worse, maybe working on a building site, which is very dangerous. Or non-manual, the child might be just doing office work, something very simple and useful for their future. The child might be doing work that's safe or dangerous. The child might be doing paid work that is supervised, so it's under controlled conditions. There's somebody checking to make sure that the conditions are safe. Or it might be unsupervised, where nobody is checking the conditions that the child is working in. So you can see that if IELTS use one of these words and talk about children doing manual paid work, all the ideas for our essay will change. Or if they only talk about children doing part-time work, again the ideas for our essay will change. So you really need to look closely at the exact issues involved in your essay question. Now, for us, we've got paid work, which means we can talk about any of these issues, anything we want. So we have a lot of freedom for this essay. Now let's have a look at the word children. When your essay is about children, you need to think a lot more deeply about the age of the child. Now, the word children generally refers to children from the age of 4 or 5 to 16 or 17. At the age of 18, they're considered a legal adult. So you can see that that is a big range of ages. Now, for our essay, which is about children doing paid work, this is a very big consideration. If a child that is 16 years old decides to work for 3 hours on a Saturday morning, that's completely fine for most parents to accept, and it's possibly very good experience. But if it is a child who is only 5 years old, working nearly 40 hours a week in a factory, which of course is actually illegal, then that's something that's considered exploitation and absolutely wrong. So you can see that the age of the child has a big impact on the ideas and the information that we present. So again, if you have an essay question in IELTS that talks about young children, then we're going to use different ideas than if the essay question was about older children. So always pay attention to that. Now, this essay only says children, which means, again, we can be very flexible with our ideas, and we can use ideas for any age range. We don't need to state, we can just give the ideas. So that's very useful for us. So before we start looking at ideas for this essay question, there's one more thing that we need to prepare, and that is vocabulary. This is all about the advantages and disadvantages. So that means we're going to be talking about advantages a lot and disadvantages a lot, and we need to paraphrase that. So I'm going to give you quite a bit of paraphrasing to help you write the essay. Synonyms to be flexible when writing about advantages and disadvantages. So for the advantage, you can change it and give the adjective. So it's advantageous. A benefit can become it is beneficial. You can talk about gaining something, so children can gain experience from working. We talk about a positive aspect, so a positive aspect of children doing paid work, or an upside. For disadvantages, we can talk about a drawback. Now, here we've got an obstacle. An obstacle is very similar to a difficulty. And for this essay, we can't actually use that. Even though it is a synonym for a disadvantage, it cannot be used in all situations. So be careful with these two. An issue and a problem, they are perfect paraphrases for each other. A downside and a negative aspect. Let me give you a few more words now to be more expressive when talking about advantages and disadvantages. We can also use these words when we're writing. Minor and major. So if you're talking about a small disadvantage, then you can talk about a minor disadvantage. Or if you're talking about a very serious, a very big advantage, you can talk about a major advantage. Serious, then you can use that for a serious advantage, serious disadvantage. Obvious means it's very clear and evident. A significant, that is another synonym for major. And the main, again, that's another synonym, the main advantage or the main disadvantage. So you can also use these words in your essay as well. Now you've probably noticed that we haven't used pros and cons, and that's because they are informal and not appropriate for essay writing. But you can use them in your IELTS speaking test, the pros and cons of something. So now we've looked at the essay structure and language, let's have a look at some ideas before we start writing. Here are the advantages that we're going to use for this essay. So one advantage that children have from doing paid work is that they can learn the value of money. They understand that it's not free, they have to work to get money. Another advantage is that they learn to manage money, and that's all about working to earn money, saving that money so they can then afford to buy something. And a third advantage is the responsibility and independence that they can learn. So there's quite a few benefits, but is it enough? Well, this is all about getting a higher band score. Now, many students, what they do is they take an advantage, they write one sentence, firstly. They move to the next advantage. Secondly, they write one sentence. Thirdly, they write one sentence. And it becomes like a list of advantages and nothing more. So if you want to get a higher band score, what we're looking at are the supporting points for each advantage. So that means that you're going to have, firstly, you'll introduce the advantage and then you'll develop it further. And this helps with two things. One is that it provides more information about your ideas. That helps you get a higher band score. Secondly, it will also help you with your grammar and your language because you're giving more flexibility. You're giving a bigger range of sentences rather than firstly one advantage, secondly another advantage. So developing your ideas is very important. Now what happens is that many students plan their advantages and then they start writing. But again, I want you to stop and I want you to think. You do need your supporting points. They need to be planned. So let's have a look at them now. So here we've got the supporting points. The first one, we're going to just give more information about what we mean when we say they learn the value of money. And what we're going to explain is that it teaches children that they have to work hard if they want to get money. So that's all about money not being free anymore. It's not from their parents, they have to work hard to get it. So that's an extra bit of information. For the second advantage, we're going to give an example. And that will be when all the children have a part-time job. And they do this because they want to save money to be able to afford to buy something. So that's an example. Then when we look at the third advantage of responsibility and independence, we're going to look at the future. And this is a benefit that children will get when they're adults and they're ready to enter society. So you can see it really helps to have all your supporting points planned because then we can just write a sentence for each one and it will be easier to write when we do the essay. Right, let's have a look now at the other side, the disadvantages. I've got two disadvantages for this essay for why it is wrong for children to do paid work. The first disadvantage, as I've mentioned before, is that it opens children up to exploitation and slave labour. That's a really big issue. And what we're going to do, the supporting points will be an example, and I'm going to use an example of developing countries. You could use underdeveloped if you want. And I will explain that the children do not have legal protection when they're doing their work, and it can often be really tough, hard, manual work as well. And another problem with this is that they're doing the same work as adults, but for negligible wages, which means low wages. It's often a good idea when you're planning your supporting points to think of any useful language that you might want to use and make a note of it. The second disadvantage is about schoolwork. Now, if children are doing paid work, they can't focus on their schoolwork, which is a problem. And the problem will be that good grades are important for their future. You can see that we've got 2 disadvantages, but we had 3 advantages. Is it important to have an equal number? No, not at all. It's up to you. You can also see that I'm planning to have 2 supporting points here for this disadvantage, but only 1 supporting point for this one. Is it important to have a balance? Well, it's good to have a balance, but if it's a difference of only 1 sentence, that's absolutely fine. Another reason why it's good to have the supporting points planned is that when you write your essay, you should be focusing on your grammar and on your vocabulary. You shouldn't be trying to think of ideas at the same time. So get your ideas planned, then focus on your language, and that will help you get a higher band score. Right, so we have looked at the essay structure, we have looked at the issues inside the essay question, we've looked at the language that we need to use, and we've planned our ideas, so now it's time to start writing. And we will start with the very first sentence of the essay, which is the background statement in the introduction. Here we've got the information that IELTS gave us for our essay, so that's the topic, and here we have the first sentence of our essay, which is the background statement. So let me show you how I wrote it. Now, the essay question, some people think that it's beneficial for children to do paid work, while others think that it can be harmful for children. Our background statement, although paid work is thought by some to be a useful experience for children, other people consider that it can be detrimental. Now, looking at the information that IELTS gave us, it is one long complex sentence, and we will do the same. They connected it with while, this linking device here. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the linking device. It's very simple and easy, and we'll use although. If you use although, don't forget that you do need that comma. The examiner will check all punctuation, so please don't forget that. Now they say some people think, and what we've done here is we've changed it to a passive, which is thought. They also put paid work at the end of this part of the sentence. We've put it at the beginning. So what we're doing is we're changing a verb from active to passive. And we can do that because we are expressing not our opinion, but other people's opinions. And we've also changed the order of information, and we've put paid work at the beginning. So although paid work is thought by some, so some people, to be a useful experience, now they say beneficial. And a lot of students would say a good experience. But again, the word good, it's not a very descriptive word to use, it's not very high band score, so it's better to use useful experience. And we've got for children, don't forget to introduce this is about children. You must make sure that all the information here, all of it, is given in your background statement. Don't miss any information out at all. And the next part, we say other people, but they've written others, so it's just a very small alteration. They say others think, and we say other people consider that. It can be detrimental. They have harmful, we have detrimental. So you can see there's quite a lot of paraphrasing. We've changed the order of information. We've changed the verbs as well. So that is our background statement. Now it's time to look at the thesis statement, which is the hardest sentence to write for the advantage-disadvantage essay. So let's have a look at that now. Here are 3 thesis statements, and I want to show you the difference between a good thesis statement and a bad thesis statement for an advantage-disadvantage essay. Now let's have a look at number 1. This essay will explore the advantages and disadvantages of this issue. Now, if you visit an academic essay writing website, you will see sentences very similar to this. And of course, when you're writing for an essay at university, then you're going to use a sentence very similar. But is it okay for IELTS? And the answer is no. IELTS is a language test. It's testing your ability to use English in writing. It's not testing your memory. Now, even a very low-level student can memorise these words and copy them into their essay. So the examiner is aware of that, and the examiner will not take that sentence into consideration when they mark your essay. They will ignore it, because it's a learned sentence. It doesn't help the examiner to assess your English language. It is a thesis statement, but it won't help your score. So let's have a look at number 2. It's also very similar. Now, it does have paraphrasing, we've got benefits and drawbacks, and it does connect with the issue. It doesn't just say the issue, it connects to it. So that's a little bit better, but it's still the same problem, that it's still very much a formulaic sentence. It doesn't introduce any main points. All it does is say there are advantages and disadvantages, and we know that. The examiner knows that. The examiner has the instructions as well. So again, this is not very good either. So let's have a look at number 3, and this is how you should write your thesis statement. Children can learn about earning money and gain independence from doing paid work, but there are also drawbacks to be taken into account. Now, what we've done here is we've introduced a couple of our advantages, which is earning money and gaining independence. You don't have to introduce all your advantages, just introduce your 2 main advantages, or the ones that you think are the key. And then you mention that there are also drawbacks. You don't give them, just mention them. So we state the advantages and we mention that there are also drawbacks. Here I've said to be taken into account. You could also say to be considered. That's also possible. But we did use the word consider in the background statement, so I've given you an alternative here. So this is how your thesis statement should be written. Let's have a look now at the whole introduction written in 1 paragraph. Here is the introduction paragraph. Although paid work is thought by some to be a useful experience for children, other people consider that it can be detrimental. Children can learn about earning money and gain independence from doing paid work, but there are also drawbacks to be taken into account. So the introduction, it's focused, highly relevant, and it contains all the information that the examiner needs. The background statement with the topic and an answer to the question, so the main points. This introduction is about 44 words in length, and that's enough. You shouldn't be aiming to write a long introduction. As soon as you've written those 2 sentences, that's all you need to do, and it's time to move on to the body paragraph. Right, so let's move on now to body paragraph number 1, to the advantages. The first sentence of any body paragraph is called the topic sentence, and it is the most important sentence that you're going to write in the paragraph because it tells the examiner what the paragraph is about. So this means you need to plan and think carefully about how you're going to write your topic sentence. So for body paragraph number 1, I've got 2 topic sentences to show you. On the one hand, there are a number of advantages to children doing paid work. Firstly, and then I give the advantage. Or I could start directly. Firstly, one benefit of children doing paid work is that they develop an understanding of the value of money. So which one is the best to use? Well, they're both good, and I use both of them. It depends on what you're looking for. Now, as you know, we planned our advantages. We've got 3 advantages, and each advantage has a supporting point. Now, most body paragraphs are usually about 5 sentences long, 5 complex sentences, but we've got 6. So that means it's quite a long body paragraph. We don't want it to be even longer. So that means I'm not going to choose this. I'm going to choose this one, which is a direct start. So think about it. If you don't feel that you have enough words, use this method. If you have too many ideas to give, then use this one. Now, this one starts with on the one hand, and that again is a perfect way to start. You've got on the one hand, which shows one side, and on the other hand, for the other side. So if you use on the one hand, you must use on the other hand for your second body paragraph. You can't change that, it's fixed. And again, this is a topic sentence, and this shows that we've got one advantage coming and then more. When we use this method, we need to look at the first 3 words. Now, the examiner will see that we've got the word firstly, and that means the examiner will know that we're going to have firstly, we're going to have a secondly, and possibly a thirdly. So the examiner already knows our method of linking ideas and introducing the advantages. The next 2 words, one benefit, shows the examiner the content of the paragraph. So the examiner can see that this is all about the benefits, and here is the first one. So then the examiner will look for the other benefits as well. So it's very important that you think carefully to what words you're going to use to help the examiner understand your paragraph more clearly. That is a good essay. Right, so this is the one we're going to use. Now let's look at the whole paragraph together. The first full body paragraph for the advantages. Firstly, one benefit of children doing paid work is that they understand the value of money. This also teaches them not to waste money, as they realise the work needed to earn it. Secondly, having a paid job is advantageous, because children take their first steps in learning how to manage and save money. Many older children, for instance, have a part-time job in order to save up for something that they would otherwise be unable to afford. Thirdly, working teaches children responsibility and independence. These skills help children develop into self-supporting adults ready to enter society and the workforce. So what you can see is we've got firstly, we've got secondly, and we've got thirdly. 3 advantages. We've used different language. We've got benefit, we've got advantageous, and then we just have a direct point on the third one. Each of the advantages has a second supporting sentence so that we can expand and explain our ideas in detail. And this also offers more variety. Instead of having one sentence that starts with firstly, the second sentence starts with secondly, and the third sentence starting with thirdly, we're offering more flexibility. If you have firstly, secondly, thirdly directly after each other, that is often the reason why some students only get band score 6, because it becomes like a machine, mechanical, and the examiner looks for that, and that is a characteristic of band score 6. So to get above 6, so to get band score 7, 8 and 9, you need to look at all the flexibility, and that means adding more information and going into detail. So this also teaches them, for instance, giving an example and these skills and explaining why that's important. Right, so that is the first body paragraph. You should be aiming for about 95 words for your first body paragraph and your second body paragraph. That could be 5 sentences or 6 sentences. It depends on your points and your writing. This is a little bit over that, but that's because this is a band score 9 essay. Right, so let's have a look now at the second body paragraph about the disadvantages. Body paragraph number 2. On the other hand, one problem when children have a job is that it potentially exposes them to exploitation through slave labour. For example, in some developing countries, children are made to work full-time, but due to their age are not protected by law. As a result, they're paid negligible wages for work that can be tough, manual work. Another possible issue is that the time children spend working prevents them from focusing on their schoolwork. Having a good education is the key to a successful future. So, being employed as a child can result in a poor academic performance, which can be harmful in the long run. So what you can see here is that we've started with on the other hand. Now lots of students ask me, if I use on the other hand for the second body paragraph, do I need to use on the one hand to start the first body paragraph? And the answer is no. You can use on the other hand at any time. It doesn't need to be connected to on the one hand. And of course we've got advantages, then we've got the disadvantages, so this is a very good way to start. It shows opposites. Another thing you're going to notice is that we've got the two problems here. In the first one we use the word problem, and in the second one we use the word issue. So we're not repeating vocabulary too much, and we're showing some flexibility. Another thing you're going to notice is that in the first body paragraph, for the advantages, we used firstly, secondly, and thirdly to introduce our advantages. And of course, when you come to the disadvantages, you shouldn't use the same technique. You have to show flexibility. So what we've got is one problem, another possible issue. And this way the examiner can see that we do have two problems, but we are introducing them in a different way. So that is the second body paragraph. Let's have a look now at the conclusion. The conclusion. In conclusion, while children can benefit from some work experience, it can also lead to exploitation or lower grades at school. So we've started with the linking device in conclusion, and that helps the examiner see that we are summarising the essay now. And we've got some indication that there were benefits, but we have not actually stated what the advantages are. But here what we have done is we've stated the two disadvantages that we've used. So what we've done is the exact opposite of the thesis statement. In the thesis statement we introduced what the advantages were, but we didn't actually say what the disadvantages were. We only said that there are some. And in the conclusion we do the opposite. We say there are some benefits, but we don't list them. But we do give the disadvantages. And the reason that we do this is because if you were introducing all the advantages and all the disadvantages, and then your conclusion summarises all the advantages and the disadvantages, your essay is going to be so long with so much repeated information, and none of that is a good idea. It shouldn't be too long because you've got a time limit, and you do need to think about that. You need to think about quality rather than quantity, and also you don't want so much repetition. So this is a very nice technique to use. What you can see is quite a short conclusion. There's only one sentence, and again, that's fine. There's no need to give more. So that is the essay for the advantages and disadvantages. Now it's time to move on to the essay of the advantages outweighing the disadvantages, which is much more difficult to write.